We're afraid of what people will think, or we're afraid we're not good enough, or we're afraid we're too much. And so we hold ourselves back. When we do that, we're muting ourselves. And there are too many people that are muting themselves in the world. And I, for so many years, was one of them. I've discovered the power of unmuting myself, of showing up in the world in a way that is joyfully expressed and boldly alive. That's something that has been so important to me as I've discovered how freeing it is to be unmuted, to unmute our body and to unmute our ideas and to unmute our desires, to unmute ourselves in relationships and at work, and to be our own advocates and to ask for what we want and need. The unmuted life is a life that is fully alive and fully expressed and confident and clear. And to me, it's the only way that I know how to live now. I know what it's like to feel confined and stuck and small and silenced. And I also know what it feels like to be expressed and alive and joyful and present and seen. And it's so much better of a life to be unmuted. And that is what I want to bring you into. Are you ready to unmute yourself? Let's make it happen. Hi there. Welcome everybody to another episode of Unmute Yourself. I'm your host, Rachel Druckenmiller, and I love seeing all of you in the chat already, all the comments. If you haven't already popped in the comments, let us know. Just give us a hello. Let us know where you're joining us from. It's a beautiful day here in Baltimore, Maryland. It's been crazy weather, but I think we're going to hit 70 today, and I am all about it. I'm ready for it. Just want to give a shout out to some of the folks who've been in the chat. Kamau, welcome. Toby, we've got the OGs. We've got Toby and Zach and Maureen are here. Veda is with us today. Welcome. This is going to be a really great show. I saw Jill in the chat. Oh, awesome. Tom is here. Anna says hello from the snowy mountains in Idaho. We've got Rich from Madison, Wisconsin. Oh, Dick Gorley. Oh, so good to see you here. Aaron. Oh my gosh. Erin Tilsch, we went to high school together, and I actually saw her last Monday. I spoke and sang at my high school. It was amazing to be with all of the students, over 600 students. I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and when I was there, I refused to perform. I was very shy. I was very kind of different in terms of my confidence level than I am now, and it was so cool to go back 21 years after I graduated to speak to the girls, to share some stories and insights and inspiration and perspective, and then also to get on stage and sing my first original song, Somebody, which was so fun and so life-giving. Tammy, wonderful to have you here. Tammy and I met in North Carolina last month at a women's summit that I was facilitating, and Tammy's a firecracker, a lot of fun. So hi, Tammy. Welcome. Tom, Red Sox win 2 of 3 from the Orioles. My husband appreciated that too as a Red Sox fan. Rian, hi from South Africa. Welcome, Rian. Wonderful to have you here. Keep saying hello in the chat. We're going to have a really great show today. I'm going to introduce you in a little bit to someone whose company I found out about through the power of LinkedIn. It's really amazing how this kind of stuff can happen. I'll tee that up in just a moment, but just to get our wheels turning about this idea of, I called the show today, Unmute Your Mission. And so one of the things that I would love to do would be to invite you to take a moment to pause and to think about what is a nonprofit or even a cause, maybe broadly a cause, that is near and dear to your heart. If you want to drop that in the comments. What is a nonprofit organization or a cause that's near and dear to your heart? Just last week in the mail, I got something from, there's an organization called Compassion International, where you sponsor kids and write them letters. They live in different countries around the world. And I saw my parents doing this when I was really, really little, when I was in elementary school. And so it was normalized to me that one of the things that we do as humans is we give from what we have, whatever that is, and we do it in a way to improve the lives of other people. And so I just got in the mail last week. It says, time flies when you're changing lives. They sent this, they sent this to me. It was for 15 years of sponsorship. There's several girls, Emma, Nancy, and Jocelyn, that I've had the opportunity to support. And they send me letters. It's so sweet. They send me letters and draw me pictures. And then I get to send them letters and draw them pictures back, and then financially support them in a way that ensures they're going to have education and healthcare, social support. And it feels really meaningful, to do stuff like that. I'm just checking out the chat to see what we've got here. We've got a shout out from Daniel. Daniel, I'm going to be mentioning something in a moment, from Peekaboo ICU from Maryland. Shout out to Compassion International. Yes, the Oakland Zoo. Tom is recently becoming, I can't wait to hear Tom, a docent there at the zoo. So amazing. Caring Across Generations, Boy Scouts of America, St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Hi, Melinda. Good to see you here. Wings, an equine shelter. Middleton Outreach Ministry. Covenant House, St. Jude's Children's Hospital, and Alzheimer's Association. Hey, Robert. Good to have you here. We're just sharing in the chat what's a nonprofit organization that you support and care about. Rare Diseases South Africa, Sadie's Purpose, which helps children and families in the NICU. These are popping up. Isn't this so great? I'm learning about so many new things today, which is, by the way, the power of this community is all of you coming together and sharing from your heart what is meaningful to you, so that now other people have some ideas for where they could go if someone says, I don't really know what I want to support. You have a list of about 15 things right now in the chat. I wanted to mention that. So and I also wanted to give a shout out before I introduce our guest today. I want to give a shout out to Peekaboo, which is the organization that powers the analytics for this show. And I wanted to just give an appreciation to some people who I see here. Actually, there's analytics that they do that analyzes LinkedIn posts and content to be able to see who engages most with you. So who in your community consistently shows up with the time and energy and the way they engage in comments, coming to and participating in these, live shows and whatnot. And so I got a list of the people over the past year that have been the most engaged with supporting the content, and things like this that I share on LinkedIn. And so I just want to give a shout out to those people in order. The person, actually, let me go from 10 to 1. Tim Green, number 10, Rich Gasson. Shout out, Rich is here. Number 9, thank you so much for how you support what I do on here. Leslie Wayrich, she's on there as number 8. Sam Morgan, number 7. Zach Demopoulos, number 6. I know he's here today. Nancy Deborah Barrows, number 5. Michelle Adams Burchett, number 4. Tim Sohn, our producer, the wizard behind the curtain of this show, number 3. Dr. Nupi Aurora, number 2. And number 1 is here today. She's been someone who's been so supportive over the years and has a big, big heart. And I know we'll love the conversation we're about to have, Toby Kester. So thank you. Much appreciation, much gratitude to all of you for the ways that you show up and are so supportive. So grateful. All right. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and take a moment to introduce you to our guest today. And the way I found out about this person was through a guy named Darren McKee, who posts a lot on LinkedIn. I really like the stuff that he shares on here. And he had posted a picture of this blanket that he'd gotten. And I went in the comments and found somebody who represented the company's brand and tagged them to make sure they saw the post. And then that led to a whole series of conversations. And it also led to me getting one of these beautiful blankets in the mail. And it made me curious, what is this company and what do they do and who are they? We have this blanket on our bed every single night, and it's so warm. And all of you are going to want one of these by the time the show is over. And so that led me to find out about this company called Sackcloth Ashes and their CEO, Bob Dalton. So let me introduce you to him. He's our guest today. He's a social entrepreneur, podcast host, TEDx speaker, author, and founder CEO of Sackcloth Ashes, a one-for-one blanket company donating a blanket to a local homeless shelter for every blanket sold. How cool is that? He's a leading proponent of social sustainability, a philosophy encouraging every individual to contribute to solutions in their communities. Determined to learn more and to help educate others, he launched Love Your City, a foundation and media platform dedicated to highlighting hyper-local solutions and stories that inspire people to get involved. And you can go to loveyourcity.org and you can search your city on there and find out all the ways you can get involved with something locally. It's so cool. He launched the Love Your City podcast, traveling across the USA and internationally to interview journalists, nonprofit leaders, and social activists doing meaningful grassroots work in their communities. His dream is to see social sustainability become a staple of modern ethics, education, politics, business, humanitarian work, journalism, and communal life. I mean, y'all are in for a treat today. So without further ado, Bob Dalton, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. It's wonderful to have you here, and I'm excited for everyone to just learn more about your story and what inspired the mission behind the work that you're doing, and the difference that it's making in the world. And so, I guess starting off, would love to hear from your perspective, anything along, if you can think about any point in your journey, whether it's your personal journey, professional journey, some combination of both. A time in your life where you felt like you were holding back, you were letting doubt or fear kind of dictate how you were showing up in a certain way. And what was a journey that you went on to go from that to showing up in a way that was more unmuted and bold and courageous? Any journey you want to take us through?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, and wonderful to finally be connected with you.
Yeah.
And thanks for buying a blanket.
Yeah.
I would say probably that moment in my life was I was 24 years old, and I came up with the idea of starting Sackcloth and Ashes because my mom ended up living on the streets for a period of time in her life. And through her journey on the streets, it inspired me to actually do something about homelessness, and started calling homeless shelters in my area to ask what they needed. And they said they needed blankets. So I came up with the idea, for every blanket that I sell, I'll donate a blanket to a local homeless shelter. And like most people who have really good ideas, I did absolutely nothing about it. And so I found myself at a time in my life where I was 24 years old, had an idea to start something, was applying for jobs, nobody was getting back to me, and I was sitting in my car. And it was one of those, like, what is the meaning of life moments. Like, it felt like all of the walls are kind of caving in on you, and you're just kind of sitting there, like, you know, thinking about what your next move's going to be, and just feeling really, really, really down. And so I'm sitting in my car, and my knees are up on my steering wheel, and my seat's leaned back all the way. And I'm sitting there, and I look up, and my coffee cup was on my knee. And on the coffee sleeve, it said, "What are you waiting for?" And my first thought was like, what the hell coffee company puts quotes on their sleeves? I just thought that was so weird and funny in itself. But it was just like in this moment where I felt like everything was kind of caving in on me, and I felt, almost like unmovable. That this question stared at me in the face. What are you waiting for? And so that was the moment where I truly can say I look back on my journey and decided that I'm going to start Sackcloth and Ashes, and started my car and drove down to Joann's Fabric
Mm-hmm.
and bought a sewing machine and a roll of fabric. And I still get Joann's text messages, discount codes on my phone as a 9 years later, as a reminder of like the journey that I've been on. And so, yeah, I bought a sewing machine and a roll of fabric, and that's how I started Sackcloth and Ashes. But that's the question I often ask a lot of people now is, what are you waiting for? And is there something that you can do to take action on an idea, or something that you're thinking about, that could end up leading to a 9-year meaningful, life-changing experience?
Wow. I mean, I got chills like thinking about that. That moment, sometimes there's those moments that happen that are undeniable, right? You're in the middle of that moment where you're like, oh, it's like, here's your sign moments. If you're looking for one, it's really
Mhm.
like literally staring you right in the face. And when you have a moment like that, it becomes, you feel, I don't know if you felt this way, but the way I describe it, how it feels like a compulsion. Like I have to do something. It doesn't really seem optional anymore. I'm just curious about what your experience was when you think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we all are constantly battling fear and not, going after what we might, truly feel like we're supposed to go after.
Mm-hmm.
And fear is usually the thing that ends up, paralyzing us. It's not the thing in which we fear. And um, one of my favorite poems is by Shel Silverstein, and it's called Fear.
Hmm.
And it says Barnabas Browning was so scared of drowning that he never would swim or get in a boat or take a bath or cross a moat. He would just sit in his room day and night with the door locked tight, shaking with fear that a wave might appear. And he cried so many tears that it filled the room and he drowned. And I think that for me, that poem really represented that moment of me sitting in my car, because it was all these things that I feared that was ultimately keeping me from pursuing the thing that I felt like I was supposed to do. And so usually it's like it's the, metaphorical tears that we're crying because we're scared of things not working out, that ultimately end up becoming the thing that keeps us from pursuing what we should be pursuing. It's not the things that we're actually scared about, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. And we can tell ourselves, I mean, we can get ourselves worked up telling ourselves 1,000 reasons why it won't work. And a lot of the times I think we don't pause to think, well, what if it did work? What if you actually pursue this thing, and what if it works? It's almost like we run out of excuses if we have to honestly answer that question, and there's something that's a feasible answer on the
Yeah.
other side of that, you know?
Yep. Yeah. And so for me, that was the moment where I had to I was at a crossroads. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do I, choose to give in to this fear and kind of continue to sit in this unknown aspect, or do I give it a shot? And, looking back now, like, it was such a radical decision that I'm kind of shocked at my own self at the time. I was, being 34 now, I was 24 at the time. And, it took radical courage to drain my bank account and pursue that. And, faith on my wife's end to allow me to pursue starting a blanket company with a roll of fabric from Joann's. It seemed absolutely crazy and, not logical. And, but now you see where Sackcloth's at now. And I think that, that's a testament of stepping out. It's like, and then from that point on, there was immediate obstacles. Like, I bought a sewing machine and a roll of fabric, but I quickly realized that I cannot sew. And so that was like obstacle number one. If I would have just had the enough courage just to get to Joann's, buy the sewing machine and the roll of fabric, and then, get to a point where, oh, I can't sew, so I just gave up.
Mm-hmm.
Sackcloth wouldn't exist if I gave up on obstacle number one. So I think that it takes like this, it's not just that first act of courage, because I have a lot of friends that start a lot of things, you know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of obstacles immediately that come your way that you kind of have to keep pushing and keep figuring things out. If they don't work out the way you hope in the beginning, and that's the thing, they don't usually work out the way you hope. You're a starter. You started the show. I'm sure you've started other things. You have to continue to find strategic ways to move forward, because the reality is things don't work out the way we plan,
Yeah.
and we have to continue moving forward despite that. And I think that that's where, if you really want something to happen and you really want to pursue something, you have to be willing to, you know, sort through and sift through all of the different obstacles that are going to come your way. So when people say, "Hey, I have an idea and I want to start something," I always let them know, like, "Hey, like, you're going to want to have it. You're going to want to be able to want that and pursue that bad enough to be able to, you know, sift through all the hard things that are about to happen."
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Lisa says here, amazing story. I'm in the bedding business trying to restart after crash and burn.
mhm.
So connected. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so yeah, I mean, as far as utilizing this time and being able to share with your network, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has in
Yeah.
regards to either starting something or running something in 2023 in what I would consider one of the most difficult markets to have a product business.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I want to give a couple of comments that folks have made too. You know, Veda said we have to get out of our heads and take action. And Zach said, what a great story. Your mom has to be beaming. And then, Veda said, if we only decide that we're supposed to, you know, make mistakes, you know what I mean? Like, we have to make sure that we have to recognize that we have the capacity to overcome even those mistakes and any of those setbacks. And it's like truly the combination of perseverance and resilience and creativity. I think those three things,
Yeah.
perseverance, resilience, and creativity, are three things that I think get a, you know, get a person through a time, a season of adversity and difficulty, if you really want it, right? If you really want it, it's like you'll find a way.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's any other values that you think are important, any other character strengths aside from those three that have been helpful for you.
Well, I mean, I think the big thing, and specifically on the topic of unmuting yourself, like you have to be willing to experience trial and error in both pursuing something in your actions and also pursuing something with your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a very sensitive culture right now where not a lot of people want to speak their voice because they're afraid of, receiving criticism or pushback or being
Mm-hmm.
canceled or whatever. And and so on the contrary, people who are speaking their voice, many people, they come across as assholes because they're feeling like they have to force their way into the conversation. And so I think that there really is a happy medium to be had. You can speak your voice, live out your passions, and stay true to yourself without A, silencing yourself, and B, being an asshole. And I think that that's where, like, I really want to encourage people out there to, like, hey, it's going to take trial and error. We're going to have critics. We're going to have people that give pushback and trolls, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to start developing our voices. We have to start forming our own opinions and pursuing things that are important to us. And you don't have to do that in an aggressive way. I challenge a lot of my friends that are aggressive online and speaking out their views all the time. And I'm like, you don't have to do it in a way that, you're trying to constantly convince everyone. Just stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think whether it's pursuing an idea, a business, a book, whatever that might be for you, the most important thing is stay true to yourself and stay focused, and don't give in to all the criticism and the feedback right now. It's a very sensitive time, so it's scared a lot of people from speaking out and pursuing what they're passionate about.
I agree. And I have a question from Anisia I'm going to bring on up here in just a moment, but I'm with you. I know when I left, I was in a corporate job for 13 years. And then when I left that job to start my own business, to pursue speaking full time, I
Mhm.
had people before I even launched said, people are going to pay you to do that. Like, you're going to, what's your business plan? I had so much pushback before I even started. People that didn't even know me that
Yeah,
felt very emboldened to have an opinion about what I was doing, even though it wasn't their life. And so part of it is you have to have this sense of, what in some cases might seem like a certain degree of foolish confidence that other people don't necessarily understand. It's not for them to understand because they're not the one doing the thing that you're doing. And someone mentioned, so Anisia had a question. She said, how did you find a company to help you get your business off the ground? I don't know necessarily how you got started, but anything you want to share about what your process was to getting from the idea of realizing you are not someone who can sew
yeah. So
to having a blanket company. Yeah.
yeah, from that point on, I found a sewist in my community who started making blankets for me, and I would put the blankets in my trunk. And the easy mindset that I had of selling blankets, and I didn't knew nothing about retail or wholesale, but I thought first step is getting these blankets into shops. So I lived in Oregon at the time. I drive up and down the Oregon coast, walking into shops with boxes of blankets, asking the people if they're interested in buying them, and explained every blanket you purchase. I'd drive a box of blankets down to the homeless shelter down the street here. So I got in about 20 shops, started a website. It was right when Shopify launched. Put the 20 shops up there, hired a local photographer, did our first photo shoot, and I was off to the races. And so that's how we started Sackcloth and Ashes. And then I got a huge break about 5 months in. I was posting on Instagram once a month, or excuse me, once a day. And after a couple months of doing that, Instagram emailed me and they're like, Bob, we love your story. We love what you're doing. We want to feature you on Instagram's Instagram account. And this is back in 2014 when Instagram really started to blow up. And so they posted us the day before Black Friday to 42 million people. So that was really our Kickstarter in a lot of ways. Was really fortunate to have that opportunity to be able to share the Sackcloth story with that many people. And then I just rode that wave. For the first 4 years, I built the company 100% on Instagram. So like 90% of our sales were through Instagram from 2014 to 2018. And so that was the early stages of the build. And it took a lot of intentionality, obviously, and a lot of, in between stories, which one day I'll write about. But That was the gist of getting it off the ground in the early stages.
Yeah. Wow, that's an incredible story. And it's the power also of consistency. So it's like you weren't showing up on Instagram with the thought that, oh, if I can guess, you probably didn't even know that was a thing, that they would necessarily feature businesses or reach out to them to do that. But you were just showing up consistently, sharing what you wanted to share to talk about the mission of the organization. Is there anything you felt that you did uniquely that might have garnered a certain amount of attention from how you shared?
It was just one of those moments where, like, because of the consistency of pursuing the vision and
Mm-hmm.
like just showing up in the places that I felt like I needed to show up. I spoke at a small conference in Portland, and first conference I ever spoke at, it was probably 250 people, and went up there, and I was 5 months in. I was like, I got a blanket company and I'm selling blankets in the, at a booth in the back, and would love for your support. And first guy that came up to me was a guy named Jeffrey Gearson, and he introduced himself. He said, I'd like to buy a blanket. I'm the head of North America for Instagram. And so I didn't even register it. I just took his business card and sold him a blanket. I was just stoked to sell a blanket. And so he reached out on email and later on, and he said the blanket has a special place in my house. And um, so it's just stuff like that, that it's kind of like you can't necessarily plan on what that big thing's going to be for you. Um, but if you're persistent enough, like I promise you that something will happen where um, you will get the recognition that you deserve if you stay true to yourself and stay true to your vision long enough. I never really know like we're launching a new initiative next week, and I have a really strong plan. I got a great strategy, but I'm like, what I do know is I'm going to stay consistent with it until 2 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, something's going to catch, and it will help take that initiative off the ground.
That's awesome. And by the way, I would encourage everyone to follow Sackcloth and Ashes on Instagram. I'm curious, other people may wonder this. I have sort of like a sense, but I'm curious the name of the company. Can you share like what inspired the name?
Yeah. Well, before I started the brand, I was reading the Book of Jewish Wisdom,
Hmm.
and it's just a massive, thick book, but it's such a good book, and because it's just filled with parables
Hmm.
and stories of just living an ethical, good life. And the name Sackcloth and Ashes really jumped out to me, and I wrote it in my phone amongst probably 20 other names of all the names that I would start companies one day. Um, and so wrote it in my phone, and then when I came up with the one for one blanket idea and helping local communities, I was like, this is perfect. Sackcloth and ashes means mourning and repentance.
Hmm.
And so the concept of it is every time somebody wraps themselves in a sackcloth and ashes blanket, it symbolizes mourning over the homeless population and repentance by contributing to a homeless shelter in your area. And so for me, it was my journey of repentance because before my mom ended up in that situation, I was judgmental to people on the streets. And so
Hmm.
this whole journey for me has been a shifting of my own mind and a shifting of my own actions toward people on the street, and really seeing them as people and not people who are choosing that or whatever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that's really what the message behind the name. And it's relatively uh it's more personal and mysterious to the public,
Yeah.
I but that's the meaning of it.
Yeah. The behind the scenes. And
Yeah.
I love that idea of having each time you're having it wrapped around you, that it's a reminder. It's symbolic,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted, yeah, I just thought it would be cool, like, one day, a couple 100,000 people could have, a blanket wrapped around them, and it symbolizes, the shifting of our mindset toward the homeless community, because we drive by people all the time, and, if the product and the packaging and everything that we have ends up helping shift people's minds in that, like, that's the ultimate win of what our product can do.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people that have reached out and said, "Hey, like, just the experience of your product and the packaging and the messaging and everything has made me see differently." And I think that that's the big win.
Well, something about your packaging that I really love is, so the blankets get sent in a box, And then the
Mhm.
box has a purpose too. So the box is not just intended to be recycled. Could you share with everyone about that too? Because I think that's really cool.
Yeah, in 2018, we launched a campaign, Blanket the United States, where we have a goal of donating 1 million blankets. And we were thinking about packaging ideas. And I was like, well, it'd be cool to have a box where the blankets come in and then they're reusable. So on the bottom of the inside of the box, actually, I have one right here. I'll just show you real quick.
Perfect.
Um, so on the bottom of the inside here, it says, take it a step further,
Mm-hmm.
fill the box up with the following items and donate to your local shelter. And it says like socks, lip balm, hand sanitizer, bandages, toiletries. And so everybody that receives a blanket, it wasn't something that we're necessarily promoting as much as we wanted to give somebody who like has this unboxing experience and then they're kind of face to face with, oh, maybe there's something that I can do
Mm-hmm.
um, to help. And if you fill the box up and you donate it, no one's going to know. And if you don't do it, no one's going to know. And it was kind of this like almost performance art of being able to invite people into contribution and kind of sorting through where am I at with this whole situation.
Yeah, I think it's super cool because it is an opportunity that otherwise that could have been missed, and so to have the chance to give people something else to be able to do to contribute, I think is a really creative thing. And I remember growing up, I went to Catholic school for 12 years, and social justice is a big part of what we learned, and we had certain community service. Hours we had to do in high school. And I remembered my parents told me the story and I was like 5. So we were sitting at the dinner table, and it must have been something that I had heard in school. And I said, there are people, maybe I was 6, maybe 6 or 7, not quite 5. There are people that don't have money for food and toys. And I want to get them money for food and toys. And so we walked around the neighborhood. And I think we collected $19.38 or something. I mean, whatever, when you're 6 or 7. And then we went down to like a local church down the street and donated it. But I think, kids especially, we have the opportunity to emphasize and to demonstrate the capacity that each one of us has to have an impact from the time we're very little. And I'm curious, I don't know if you've seen anything, and if people have kids about what. And welcome, seeing Daryl who has joined us, and Maria has joined us. Welcome. If there's anything that you've seen in the maybe something that has on your journey to do this, and the people you've been able to reach and the impact you've been able to have, what perhaps has been what's been most surprising for you along this path?
Well, the thing that I feel like right when I launched the company, I knew local was important because Tom's was doing the 1-for-1 model with shoes, but they were getting a lot of pushback. Like they were getting a lot of criticism in 2014 because they were providing shoes to other countries that was ultimately creating some sort of an economic problem for communities, taking away economic opportunities. And so I was like paying attention to that because I was like, the 1-for-1 model is brilliant, but it's not sustainable if we're taking away opportunity. You know what I mean? So that's where I was like, I can't just donate blankets. I got to make sure that it's done in a way that's actually kind of this cycle of giving back to local communities. And so that's why right out the gate, literally our mission statement from day one in our Instagram bio, still today, 9 years in, for every blanket that you purchase, we provide a second blanket to your local homeless shelter. So if you live in, Baltimore, and you buy a blanket, we'll send a blanket to a homeless shelter in Baltimore. And so local had always been a part of our messaging, but I didn't realize how much of it would actually end up shaping my entire philosophy of what I want to dedicate the rest of my career to. So that kind of opened the door for me to like be a part of a business model that's giving back on empowering people to give back on a local level. And now it's evolved into um, helping educate people on the importance of keeping our resources locally, doing impact work locally, doing as much as we can, investing in our communities and the people around us. Because now, after 9 years in, I'm convinced that this is the only way, the only shot that we have to actually solving massive societal problems.
Mm.
If we're dealing with homelessness on a national level, which is overwhelming, and we're dumping billions of dollars into this problem every year, the only way we're going to solve and have any sort of progress with homelessness is if we address it on a local level. And so that's been the downfall with a lot of these societal problems is we're trying to either rely on the government to help fix these problems
Mm-hmm.
or relying on large corporate institutions that are doing things on a national scale or on a global scale.
Yeah.
Local is the only way, in my opinion.
Mm.
And so I'm investing a lot of my time, energy to help educate professionals on how they can make an impact on a local level that is sustainable and not cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I launched a foundation called Love Your City. You can visit it, loveyourcity.org. You can search your city, and we'll show you all of the nonprofits in your community and how you can get involved.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's something that my team built in order to help support local communities, get people actively engaged in local communities. And that's become my entire philosophy. And that's what surprised me. Like I didn't go into starting a business or blanket company and then think this is going to end up shaping my entire philosophy in which I dedicate the rest of my life to, and really feel like I have a personal message that I want to give to the world that I feel like is important.
Yeah, I think that is so critical of focusing on, because local is the thing that you're closest to. You know, it's in our communities. I mean, this could be a neighboring community. This could be a community in which you live. This could be a community in which a loved one lives. This could be a community in which a coworker lives. This could be a community in which, someone who's just really going through a tough time in life lives. I mean, we have,
Yeah.
I think, a responsibility to to care for the people that are essentially in our, you know what I mean, that kind of within our reach.
Mhm.
And I love that you do this, that you focus on giving to local homeless shelters, so that when someone is purchasing a blanket, depending on, to your point, wherever they live, that they have the opportunity to feel like they're also making a difference. You know, it's like, I'm going to stay warm, and this is great, and they're really cool. The designs too. There's some things I've learned about the designs on these blankets that you have. Could you share more about some of the designs and how they're created and who the artists are? I think that's interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our fabric is made in Italy, from recycled materials. So literally, sweatshirts and t-shirts get put into a grinder, turned into yarn, put into a jacquard loom, um, made into the fabric, and then we ship all of our fabric from Italy to Oregon,
Mm.
which we have a 20,000 square foot facility where we hire local refugees in Salem, Oregon, and people there to help produce the product, cut the fabric, sew the labels, and then we do all of our shipping and fulfillment in house. And so we're really proud of the entire process from start to finish. Like, we've been intentional in the 9 years to build this thing right, build it to where it can sustain rapid scalability. So we moved on from the local seamstresses to finding a great, community in Italy, and then built a great community in Oregon. And now we're producing anywhere from 7 to 15,000 blankets a month. And then over the next 4 to 6 months, we'll be jumping to about 20,000 blankets a month. So we're gonna rapidly scale here in the next couple of years, and I believe within the next 3 to 4 years, we'll be doing about 100 million in revenue, um, and then that will be the ultimate beta test for me to be able to take a lot of the things that I've been able to use in building and constructing a community of scale and start having, bigger conversations on what can we be integrating into society that can actually work.
Mm.
Um, so that's the goal here. I'm
That's
not
awesome.
interested in being a CEO of a retail company. I'm interested in building something that can ultimately turn into a potential case study of implementing certain strategies in a society that I believe could work for scale and healthy growth.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
That's awesome. I mean, you've certainly got some new fans here, and I love. Daryl says, "I love this mission, providing a big need for the homeless. I've seen how bringing much needed support could be a big boost for communities during my travels during
Mhm.
our public education campaign." And so, I think, and I'm seeing that a lot too, Daryl, love it. Will's commenting, great mission. Welcome, Will. Good to see you here. And Toby, yeah, local is closest to our hearts, right? Makes sense when you explain it the way you do. Thanks for taking the time to articulate the narrative in such simple, elegant terms. Just reminding us, right, that we have the capacity as individuals. It's like if every individual is doing something that's making an impact, then there's a collective impact from that ultimately emerges, that can have this ripple effect, that can do more than any one of us could do alone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is like once we all realize that we have a responsibility, it's something that I teach my team, and this is
Mm-hmm.
how we're building our company. We live off of 4 pillars in our company, and this is how we're going to continue to grow all the way up. Is number one, freedom. I give my team a lot of freedom. We just moved to a 40 work week with no pay cut. We provide unlimited paid time off. So there's a lot of freedom in the company. I want people to have a good, healthy life work balance. The second thing is responsibility. You are responsible for your role in this community. So depending on how you do, it's not just to make me proud or your manager proud or whatever. It's to make yourself proud. How are you doing in your role? And how is your actions positively or negatively affecting the community at large? You can have all the freedom you want, but not be a contributor to a community. And I think I share that because I think that that plays into our conversation of all of us having a role and a responsibility here. Everyone's constantly fighting for, oh, this is my freedom and freedom. We're always fighting for freedom, but freedom for what? If we're going to have freedom, we have to also understand that we all have a responsibility to the community at large. And if we're not willing to be a contributor, we're never going to see progress in society. And so we can't stop. We have to stop blaming the government. We got to stop blaming corporations. It's easy to point the finger and blame everybody else for our problems in our communities
Mm-hmm.
until we understand that we have a responsibility individually to do something. We're never going to see progress. And so that's my hope, is helping people realize their potential, helping people realize how they can contribute, and doing everything I can to help provide and make it easy for people to get plugged in and involved, which is why we built loveyourcity.org.
That's awesome. And you were saying freedom, responsibility. You said you had 4 pillars. I'm so curious. And Will said, by the way, I'm so needed to hear this today. And then Toby says, tell us more about your team, please. You got a
Um,
hungry bunch of people here.
yeah, so the other 2 pillars are communication.
Okay.
So how we communicate with one another. We eliminated phone calls and text messages in our company, and we've moved everything to Slack, Gmail. And then if you need to schedule a call or a Google Meet, you can. But we did that because if you're only working 4 days out of the week, you have to move efficiently. And eliminating phone calls and text messages is for 2 reasons. One, to protect one another's time. I can't tell you how many calls I used to get and say, "Hey, Bob, do you have a minute?" And then it turns into a 30-minute call. Well, I'm in the middle of a creative session. You know, I'm in the middle of doing something, and then boom, my day gets completely disrupted and my energy gets thrown off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a big part of our communication, is tightening all that up, making sure everyone's clear on what their roles are, and then making sure that everybody in our company gets touched base with at least 30 minutes a week from the person that they're reporting to. So everyone has a voice. So, some companies, including ours in the past, we do, employee reviews
Mm-hmm.
once every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, now we're doing them once a week.
Mm-hmm.
We're checking in with every single person in our entire company once a week, and we're asking them really fundamental, basic questions. Is there any new processes? Is there any new documents that have been created? What are your action items? What are your deliverables? And how can I best support you this week?
Mm-hmm.
And when you can give a level of structure and accountability to each person in the company and really check in with them to ask genuinely, how can I help support you and what do you need? We have a constant list of things that we know is needed for each person in the company to make them feel supported in their role and to be a great team player. So communication is the third, and then the fourth is collaboration, understanding how to work with one another. So after we've clearly defined every single person's role and lane in the company,
Mm-hmm.
how do you effectively collaborate with one another in the right timing, in the right way when it's absolutely needed?
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the four things that we live by and kind of what I'm beta testing. And I do believe that sticking to these four things, um, and making sure that every single person stays true to their role, we're going to rapidly scale. The momentum of our company is already picking up so much,
Mm.
just because we've clearly defined every role and we've made sure that every single person is sticking to these four things.
That's awesome. And I have Melinda dropped in. Melinda's in the human resources space. She love these pillars and listed them out: freedom, responsibility, to your community at large, communication, limiting phone calls and text messages, and in collaboration. Number four, and Toby says, I don't think I've ever thought of accountability as a gift before. Wow.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, I actually I'm working through this real time right now. I don't like the word manager because our jobs as leaders are not to micromanage people. And I've told people all the time in my company, I'm like, look, we cannot hold your hand and babysit you, but it is your job as a leader to constantly make sure that you've clearly defined roles and expectations.
Yeah.
And so if you've done that really well, like clearly defining roles and expectations for your team, you're going to be able to offer more freedom to them, and you're going to be able to more support them rather than have to micromanage them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like I've built a 250 page deck in Canva, and that's what I run the company on. We have every single person in the company in that deck, and I've clearly defined every person's role, what documents that they are overseeing. Um, we don't even allow people to create a document or a folder on Google Drive without getting that approved first, because I don't want a bunch of documents floating out there that I'm not aware of. And so I have in this master deck, I have a very clear picture on what's happening in the company at all times, what people are working on, what they're delivering, how much I'm investing in each role, to understand value. Um, but at the end of the day, people I think on my team, they really, really love their job. And I've made it really, really, really clear to everybody on my team. Sackcloth and Ashes is an incubator. We are all going to move on beyond sackcloth. Life will exist beyond sackcloth and ashes. And I am not trying to convince anybody to stay.
Mm.
And my team knows that they have my full support. If any of them come to me and say, Bob, I'm moving on to something else that I feel like I'm supposed to do,
Mm.
I will be the first one to step up and support them on whatever that next thing is, open up my Rolodex, provide any sort of resources that they need, vouch for them. But knowing that Sackcloth and Ashes is a incubator to help get them prepared for whatever is next in their life.
Mm.
How can we as a team and leaders in the company help support them and help guide them and help grow in their character and in their skill set, so that when they move on from Sackcloth and Ashes, they are equipped to do incredibly powerful work in the world.
Mm.
And I treat my own role like that. Sackcloth and Ashes is a learning grounds for myself, even to prepare me for whatever's next for me. And so that's when you have that mindset where I'm like not trying to keep everybody on the team and have this weird manipulative thing going on all the time. No, we have an open door policy. That's part of the freedom.
Mm.
People are on my team because they're wanting to be on the team and they're choosing to be on the team, not because they feel stuck or that I'm, somehow creating some weird manipulative thing of trying to keep them loyal to the team. So that's we're trying to help set them up for success.
I mean, so much good here. Jill says, love this leadership approach. Kudos to you and your team for taking the time to invest in culture and being mindful of how the people are impacted. I'm hearing sort of a theme in everything that you're sharing, Bob, which is transparency and clarity. And when people have clarity, there's less confusion. And I think in a lot of organizations, there's such a lack of clarity around who's doing what and what the company's doing and what's happening and what's coming next and what everyone's working on or where something is, to your point about files, that people are expending energy on things that are not productive.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend once who told me that the, the, the time where he was bullied most in his life was when he was shoveling snow with his dad. And he didn't know how to shovel snow. And his dad kept yelling at him to shovel the snow better.
Mm.
But his dad never took the time to teach him it. And he's been bullied in a lot of other ways, but this was the number one form, he said, of bullying. And so for me, leadership is not telling people to do something all the time without teaching them to do it. That's almost a form of bullying. Leadership is teaching people how to do something and then letting them set free to do it.
Mm.
So we cannot constantly hold people to a standard and expectations that we ourselves have not stepped in and clearly defined. And I think that's probably the number one breakdown of companies and why cultures fall apart, why companies fall apart, is because there's not an intentionality to make sure that every single person is clear on exactly what they're supposed to do. And then that leader fights to help them stay within that lane and make sure that any responsibilities that come into that lane fits their lane and protects them from all of the responsibilities thrown their way. There's nothing more frustrating for somebody to get handed something to do and it's not their job.
Mm.
And so that's what we really are trying to protect in our companies. And if we can do that, we're going to have a really powerful, trusting culture.
Yes, that's what emerges when the things that you're intentionally putting in place are adhered to. Is like inherently trust. It takes a certain amount of trust to do that because it's different than the way a lot of organizations are run. But if people are really going to buy into that, then the outcome of that is that you have a trusting culture of people that, aren't having to hide. I mean, Rich said, ironically, we all have those choices in our jobs to leave or stay, but you regularly say it explicitly.
Yeah.
So people forget, people are employed at will. I mean, they can leave at
Yeah.
any moment,
And,
right?
and the way in which I communicate, I'm careful about it because it's not like, there's the door kind of policy, but
Right.
it's like, but it's more so the mindset that like, I want people to feel free to pursue and do whatever they want, whenever they want, based on what they're called to do. You know what I mean? Like, if I had somebody come to me tomorrow, like let's say the head of my product development, my product design, who's absolutely vital to our company. He said, "Hey, I have this amazing opportunity. I feel like I'm supposed to do it." I would, of course, you have to pursue that. You have to pursue that for two reasons. One, because that's what you feel like you're supposed to do. And two, it's going to be best for the company to release you and not have you stick around in something that you're not supposed to do. So I just want everyone, that's a part of our culture to want to be a part of our culture, not feeling like they're stuck or that they're doing it out of obligation or for a paycheck.
Yeah. And when that's there, I mean, think about how much energy and like mental energy that people are exerting at most companies, especially now in the midst of resets and resignations and reinventions.
Mhm.
How many people are expending energy trying to either hide what their intentions are about where they really want to go or what they really want to be doing? And how much of that could be freed up if we created spaces where there was more of a sense of what you're doing is you're embodying what you're talking about. Like you're supporting your own community. You're starting local. You're starting with your own people by saying, I want to see you be successful. And frankly, if someone doesn't want to be there, you don't benefit by keeping them there. Like if someone has to move on, and when you move on to whatever your next thing is, like, it's better for the whole when
Yeah.
we're honest with each other.
Yeah. 100%. I can tolerate, I don't like it, but I can tolerate poor work ethic.
Hmm.
What I can't tolerate is unnecessary drama
Yeah.
and people talking shit about each other behind each other's backs. And I can't do it. Like, that's not the culture that, you know, I want to be a part of. That's not the culture that I want anybody to be a part of. We do not have, I don't have any tolerance for people that are going to constantly talk negatively,
Yeah.
about other people. And so the transparency aspect of our company is like, if you have a concern or a problem or whatever, bring it to the table. Let's sort through it, and then we got to move on. We got a mission to accomplish, and we can't get caught up in a lot of these side conversations and things that end up taking our energy, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been such a great conversation. Melinda says, Bob, I'm sure this is already in the works, I would imagine. Bob, you need to write a book about leadership. Your management style is incredible, and I wish more business owners were like you. That's coming from someone in human resources who has seen a lot. People are saying this conversation's been enlightening. The whole conversation's been. Zach has a question. I want to share one more comment with you, and then we'll wrap with a question from Zach. So we
Yeah.
can leave that up to him. But Toby said a little while ago, "Oh my goodness, I'm almost on the floor because this is blowing me away. Bob is an unbelievably awesome guest for this show." So I want you to know how much we have a pretty active community here that are really they're heart-centered people. that really care about one another and that really care about doing good in the world as well. And that's who shows up on these shows, and it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone who's came on to listen. I'm always humbled and shocked that anyone would want to sit and take their morning to listen to me talk.
Well, I think there's going to be more beyond who's been here for the live bit too, and I'll share the recording with you as well. If we could fit in any thoughts you have, I know this could be probably a half hour we could spend on this question, but I know Zach is asking, you have great focus. What advice would you give to someone who's quote all over the place and needs to find their focus to
Mm,
start their venture?
Man, I've have constant conversations with people about this. Just close friends and stuff that are like always sorting through things. The latest advice that I've been giving to a really close friend of mine is you need a win. You got to
Mm-hmm.
get a win. What I mean by that is start something and stick to it. Like whatever you feel like is the most appropriate thing, stick to it and get a win. Too many people end up trying to dabble in so many different things and they're not getting any sort of progress or wins. And it gets so discouraging, like really, really quick. And you constantly feel like, man, I suck at everything. Like I can't start anything. Just start something, like something small, get a win. You got to get that confidence to really build off of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really take some time to consider what is that thing that I should start that's maybe smaller so that you can make sure that you get a win and stay consistent in it to see a little bit of progress and have something to be proud of. But no more trying to do a bunch of things all at once, scattered ideas, stick to one thing, do it really good at the best of your abilities for a small season and get a win under your belt so you can build off that and then start building your next big thing.
Yeah. There you go, Zach. There's our insights. He said that's sage advice. Find my win, stick with it, something small.
Mhm.
So habit stack wins. Yeah, leads to more wins. Absolutely,
Yeah.
Tom. Thanks for sharing that. Well, Bob, I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of everyone else who's been with us today for this live, and anyone who's watching the replay. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and insight. We've dropped your social links in the chat throughout. We'll drop them in again. And if anyone wants one of these incredible blankets and you want to support as a result of purchasing one of these, you're a local homeless shelter in your area who will also receive one if you buy one. We will drop the link to the website in as well so that everyone can go there and can just drop that right in their browser and get a blanket. It's an incredible company. On the website is sackclothandashes.com. And just thank you again, Bob, for your leadership, for your story, for your inspiration, and for the good that you are doing and inspiring in the world. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel, and congrats on the show and the community that you're building.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, bye, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll see you in 2 weeks with my producer that I'm working with on my music. And I can't wait for y'all to meet Leroy. Bye, everybody.